Hey, my name is Amoga, co-founder and CEO of Carbon Origins. We're a robotics and VR company on a mission to make robots commonplace. So we're a group of scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. We have landed robots on Mars, we've launched suborbital rockets, we've deployed satellite constellations, developed VR technologies for Disney. We're very passionate about deep tech, and we see robotics as the future of front-end labor. And our goal is to incubate that in a location, in a place where it can get the most TLC. We originally started the company in California, but we moved to Minnesota a few months ago. Really affordable to build robots in the United States here in Minnesota. There are a lot of contract manufacturers here with the right expertise. There are other companies building robots here. It is going to be the hotbed for robot manufacturing. The reason is, if you can build Skippies, our robots, to work in the Minnesota weather and geography, they can work anywhere.
Now, when you hire someone with a disability, you've immediately led by example. You've said you trust a new perspective, that you're confident in that person, in yourself, and your team. Now, I work with a theater company, and we have signs on the wall that say, "Work your quirk," and radical inclusion. They emphasize that what makes us different gives us strength, a new perspective, a creative edge. In Cajun cooking, there's an ingredient called the lagniappe, and it's that little something something that keeps you coming back. Hire somebody with a disability. It's the lagniappe thing to do.
So, you've decided to start your own business. You have the resources to sell or the services your new customers need. So what's next? Here's a simple checklist to help you get started. First, choose your business structure. Do you want a sole proprietorship, partnership, limited liability company, or corporation? Each form has tax and financial consequences. Next, check to make sure the name you want to use for your business is available. You can do this by checking with the Minnesota Secretary of State office. If you want to be a sole proprietor, all you have to do is register the business name with the Secretary of State office. Or if your business is going to be an LLC or a corporation, when you file the business structure registration with the Secretary of State's office, that registration also includes the business name. After that, you may need to obtain federal and state tax identification numbers from the Internal Revenue Service and the Minnesota Department of Revenue. Note that some businesses won't need to take this step. Need is determined by the number of business owners, if the business will have employees, and if the business makes taxable sales or provides taxable services. Next, obtain any necessary licenses and permits from state and local government. Then you will need to buy or rent space for the business and set up phone and internet service. You'll also want to start a banking and credit relationship with a bank or other financial institution. And don't forget to write a business plan with benchmarks to guide you through business growth. We can help you.
And remember, if you need help in any of these steps, please reach out to us here at the Small Business Assistance Office. We have staff available to answer your questions.
My name is John Hauk. I am president of LightRun Incorporated. LightRun manufactures and sells a specialized unweighting tool for survivors of stroke, traumatic brain injury, and other injuries. I started out my career working for a company called Cardiac Pacemakers, then later on St. Jude Medical, along with a couple of startups in between. So I came out of the cardiac world, and Minnesota has been a great place for a medical device career. Our product has been sold and is currently being used in Hennepin County Medical Center, the VA Hospital in Minneapolis, North Memorial Hospital, and we're soon going to be delivering a system to Courage Kenny. So we are getting local traction in spite of the pandemic, and our goal is to go nationwide in 2022 and beyond.
Well, I met Andrew in 2010. He was a recent graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So he already had his education before he came to us. And he was looking for work as an architect.
And I applied for over 200 jobs all over the U.S. I applied for jobs in Hawaii, New York, Florida, and didn't get any sort of response. And after I'd applied for all of those different jobs, I realized that the job market right now is really low and that I was facing discrimination, as were a lot of people with disabilities.
So he's deaf and the world is hearing, and so of course the biggest barrier for him was communication. He worked with MCIL on job interviewing skills, and he did a very nice job talking about his experience and his work qualifications, but he did struggle a little bit with the accommodation issue, and so we worked a little bit more on that.
It was my good fortune to meet Andrew back in 2007, 2008. Andrew was someone who was deaf and he had graduated from architectural school. Really my charge was, how can I help Andrew network, take smaller steps given what the economy was.
He really advocated in my job search. He wants people to get out there. He connected me with people in the field because that's what I needed. He reached out to MnDOT, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, in the Affirmative Action Office. He contacted Lynette Geschwin. She was the head of the Affirmative Action Office at MnDOT. And she was able to set up a contract job for me to inspect airport terminals. It was a fascinating job, but again, it was contract work. And they actually didn't seem to see me as a person with disabilities. Based on my resume, they said via email that they were just really impressed with my experience, and they wanted to give me a chance.
When we launched Andrew, we were not focused on his disability. We helped him develop the skills to market himself as an architect. No one with a disability gets a job because of their disability. It's all about skills, and Andrew's a perfect example of someone that took what we helped him learn and was able to independently get a job in the private sector.
Do you run a small business in Minnesota? Are you trying to expand your operations? Or need help adjusting to changes brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic? Then contact your local Small Business Development Center.
We'd like you to know that whether you're starting a brand new business, growing an existing one, or if your business needs help because of the COVID pandemic, the SBDC can provide that help, and it won't cost you a penny.
These are hard times, but if you need help with your business, Small Business Development Centers have real professionals standing by, ready to help you develop your business plan, do marketing and research, set up your accounting, gain access to capital, and much more. And they do it all for free. So contact us today at mnsbdc.com.
In Minnesota, we're training our workforce for the next chapter of the global economy.
Can't wait to get started on this project.
It's great hands-on practice.
I think our students will love it.
I'll bring this to the robotics lab.
Our education and business climate are among the best in the nation. And they work together to grow creative, high-skilled talent.
Parts can we make it this machine? The possibilities are almost endless.
We're a state that works hard, boasting one of the highest participation rates in America's workforce.
Awesome, man. This looks great. We can really do anything here.
Great things are happening in Minnesota, and we can help you thrive.
Final touch, man. Checkmate.
Join us.
Hi, my name is Amoga, co-founder and CEO of Carbon Origins. We're a robotics and VR company on a mission to make robots commonplace. So we're a group of scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs. We have landed robots on Mars, we've launched suborbital rockets, we've deployed satellite constellations, developed VR technologies for Disney. And we're very passionate about deep tech, and we see robotics as the future of front-end labor. And our goal is to incubate that in a location, in a place where it can get the most TLC. We originally started the company in California, but we moved to Minnesota a few months ago. Really affordable to build robots in the United States here in Minnesota. There are a lot of contract manufacturers here with the right expertise. There are other companies building robots here. It is going to be the hotbed for robot manufacturing. The reason is, if you can build Skippies, our robots, to work in the Minnesota weather and geography, they can work anywhere.
Now, when you hire someone with a disability, you've immediately led by example. You've said you trust a new perspective, that you're confident in that person, in yourself, and your team. Now, I work with a theater company, and we have signs on the wall that say, "Work your quirk," and radical inclusion. They emphasize that what makes us different gives us strength, a new perspective, a creative edge. In Cajun cooking, there's an ingredient called the lagniappe, and it's that little something something that keeps you coming back. Hire somebody with a disability.
Thank you. I will open the meeting up. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Governor's Council on Economic Expansion. This meeting is being held virtually as we continue to endure the pandemic. I don't have my statutory reference right here, but I think it's familiar enough. We are meeting this way because of the ongoing pandemic. And so I thank you for your time and your availability to appear in this forum. Today, subgroup 3 will be presenting. We have a panel of 4 community-based organizations that will be presenting to us today, and then the council will engage in additional dialogue with the panel and then as a group. I'm very pleased to invite the panel. Today we will be discussing understanding strategies around holistic investment in current and future workers, including BIPOC entrepreneurs and micro businesses, and how to remove systemic barriers to create a just and fair society that support all to participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. We have 4 panelists here today: Dania Bastillo, Dr. Barbara Doyle, Louis King, and Denise Butler. Great. I will start by introducing each panel. I will start with introducing the panel member. The panelists will have 5 minutes or so just to explain their organization and how they approach their work and how it relates to the work of this council. Then we will have some specific questions for the panelists, and then we will have some open dialogue with the full council. So we will get started beginning, and the order of the presenters, we will begin with Daniel. Daniel, I will give a brief introduction. You may begin, and then I will introduce the remaining panelists individually. So, beginning with Daniel Bustillo. Daniel is Executive Director of Healthcare Career Advancement Program, also known as HCAP, a national organization of SEI union locals and healthcare employers who are participating in support of developing quality healthcare education models for high-road jobs that increase equity in the healthcare workforce. During his time at HCAP, Daniel has led several initiatives designed to support healthcare workers and caregivers, such as the National Center for Healthcare Apprenticeships and the Center for Advancing Racial Equity and Job Quality in Long-Term Care. Daniel presently serves as a member of the U.S. Department of Labor Advisory Committee on Apprenticeship, the Board of Directors for the National Skills Coalition, and is a 2022-23 Aspen Institute Job Quality Fellow. Next, you'll hear from Daniel.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for members of the council. Appreciate your time today. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm going to provide a bit of our national perspective, discussing the work of HCAP, along with some of the benefits and specifics of our labor management training partnerships in healthcare that have a particular focus on supporting majority Black, Latina, AAPI, and Indigenous, with many immigrants, frontline healthcare workforce. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background on us. As was mentioned, we are a national labor management organization at HCAP that partners on developing high quality workforce education and training options across all healthcare settings, hospitals, nursing homes, ambulatory care, and home care. And we really do seek to promote job quality and equity for the healthcare workforce through high road training partnerships and strategies that focus on the intersection of racial and gender equity, job quality, and educational attainment. And more specifically, HCAP and our network partners have a long history of collaborating to develop both supply and demand side workforce solutions that directly consider the voice of workers, adult learners, and communities who too often have been left out of the development process. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more context about us as an organization and our work across the nation. These partnerships that I'm referring to span 14 states plus DC, encompassing more than 1,000 employers and approximately 550,000 workers across the country, enabling a majority woman and BIPOC frontline healthcare workforce access to education and training benefits, with more than 100,000 workers across the country enrolled in some sort of training on an annual basis. Next slide, please. With the remainder of my time, next slide, please. With the remainder of my time, I'll provide some brief I think there's a slide. There's a slide before this, if you could please go back one. With the remainder of my time, I'll provide some brief background on potential benefits and important programmatic elements to consider from our experience. So some of the potential benefits, you did hear me talk about some of the investment in BIPOC caregivers and communities, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the comprehensive industry partnership strategies we utilize. Our labor management training partnerships have a long history of working to address occupational segregation in our industry, where we really do have an overrepresentation of Black and brown caregivers in lower wage occupations and an underrepresentation as we move up the occupational ladder. With the first of these partnerships incepted more than 50 years ago as a direct outgrowth of the civil rights movement to specifically address this issue through the provision of career mobility opportunities for BIPOC healthcare workers. And as I mentioned, our partnerships have continued this work since, supporting career progression for thousands of healthcare workers around the country on an annual basis, with a variety of different benefits. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the robust package of services that are provided. And I'll also reference really briefly, just to make sure that we keep on track with the time that we have as well too, some of the support that is provided to access pathways for higher wage occupations in healthcare. Next slide, please. So you heard me reference some of the infrastructure. I'll touch upon this briefly because I do want to get to the next slide. So the manner in which we go about building infrastructure on a regional basis, which we think is really critical towards providing a holistic set of services to support healthcare workers, ranges from the identification of needs through both a supply and demand side strategy, particular funding streams that are accessed and identified, coordination with the public workforce system and community colleges, educational providers, critically important in healthcare. And then finally, the development and execution of training programs that are really designed to address industry-specific needs. Next slide, please. And I'll spend a little bit of time talking about what that comprehensive packages of services looks like that we have found to have great success and really be necessities to provide a holistic set of services to support the workforce around the country. So the programs that we work on and we provide run from A to Z. They run the entire gamut. So you see all the way from nursing programs, which span the entire nursing occupational ladder, from CNA to LPN and LVN to registered nursing, a variety of technical programs. Importantly, these career ladder opportunities and opportunities for career mobility are provided in different modalities, in-person, blended models. We do a variety of apprenticeship work as well. We provide a series of ongoing learning on a regular basis for healthcare workers around the country, from skills enhancements to tuition certification assistance to adult education programs and CEUs. Importantly, these are really localized depending upon location in a variety of different languages, something that is really critical in our context as well too, to support the healthcare workforce. We do a variety of additional trainings. You heard me reference registered apprenticeship. There's also a comprehensive series of supports, wraparound services and supports that is provided, peer support programs, a robust set of wraparound services, coaching and mentorship. These are all important considerations. Some programs have obviously childcare, transportation, emergency needs related payments associated with them. This is a really comprehensive set and a robust set of wraparound services and supports that we have found to be highly successful in supporting healthcare workers around the country, and in particular thinking about what we're attempting to do in the context of increasing equity within the healthcare workforce. And then certainly we've all heard about the immediate needs in healthcare as well too. So there's a variety of recruitment, job shadowing, development of pipelines into healthcare as well that are sort of wrapped around with this comprehensive set of services that I've talked a little bit about today. I believe my 5 minutes are up. We could get into certainly a lot more, but I look forward to engaging in the discussion further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daniel. We appreciate that and appreciate the good work that your organization does. Next, we will have Dr. Barbara Doyle. Dr. Doyle has close to 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector. She currently serves as Director of Workforce for Urban League Twin Cities, where she provides leadership for multiple workforce programs since 2016. Prior to coming to Urban League Twin Cities, Dr. Doyle served as Program Manager at Hired. Dr. Doyle also served on a Fulbright Scholars Economic Development panel and was able to utilize her nonprofit workforce development knowledge and experience, as well as her doctorate in management and leadership and organizational change. In addition to her nonprofit experience, Dr. Doyle has taught in Minneapolis charter schools. She's been the HR director and administrator in Minneapolis school districts. She's worked for charter schools, the University of Minnesota Libraries, and has been an equal employment opportunity officer for MTC. Dr. Doyle, welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner, and also to the committee. So happy to be representing the Urban League Twin Cities, and I want to say, Daniel, I will be getting in touch with you for your training programs because we certainly will be interested in training persons in health field. So thank you. I'll start off with just a brief background of the Urban League Twin Cities, and I will be respectful of my 5-minute limitation. Since 1926, the Urban League Twin Cities, they were formerly the Minneapolis Urban League. They provided services and programs to adults and youth, connecting them to training and employment and career pathways that lead to economic mobility and financial and self-sufficiency throughout the city of Minneapolis. And most recently, the Twin Cities, since becoming Urban League Twin Cities in 2019. Our offices and facilities are currently in the heart of North Minneapolis, a community that has been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, along with our long-standing commitment to serve and advocate for African descendants, the BIPOC community throughout the city of Minneapolis and the Twin Cities. Unfortunately, Minnesota has the dubious distinction of having among the nation's worst Black-white disparities in employment, economic, housing, education, and also health. Urban League Twin Cities services are designed to address and overcome these inequities. During the past 2 years, the pandemic and social and civic unrest have required Urban League workforce to be more nimble, more agile, and responsive to the needs of clients and employers, as well as respond to the major shifts in the labor market. This includes delivering client services and employer engagement efforts. We've done that virtually just to make sure that everyone is safe, and also we had to consider their health as well. So our employer engagement strategy includes hosting in-person and/or virtual job fairs and collaborating with companies to develop tailored training programs for current and future workers, including BIPOC and entrepreneurs. Marketing, employment, and career pathways in non-traditional segments. For example, energy, and we are hoping to partner with Xcel Energy, and also manufacturing and technology. It is also important that we have the ability and access to expand our employer network. We are actively engaging with chambers of commerce, industry associations, vocational, technical colleges as well. We will reaching out to OIC for some of our training as well. Additionally, our workforce department has established a business advisory group. Their group provides resources, strategic advice regarding the labor market, and the group also assists us to expand our employer network. We employ a holistic approach to outreach and recruitment efforts to engage employers in our network. As the design and execution of our programs and services are informed by industry and employers, in order to make sure prospective workers are equipped with the right skills, the right competencies and credentials to pursue available careers and entrepreneurial opportunities. The Urban League is also a resource provider in the area of digital literacy. In the year 2016, that's the year that I started, Urban League expanded its resources through a grant sponsored by the National Urban League and the U.S. Department of Labor. And I'd like to point out that the Urban League received national recognition for outstanding performance. We exceeded outcomes among other Urban League affiliates in the Urban Tech Jobs Program. In 2021, Urban League was awarded grants and contracts from Google and Comcast to continue this program, making it possible to launch Urban Tech Jobs Program 2.0 from 2021 to 2023. We are making strides toward our vision. Our vision for our workforce is an equitable society can be realized. Our strategic priorities are, number one, is to strengthen our position and reputation as a powerful and trusted voice that sets the agenda and drives solutions. Secondly, we assure the quality and effectiveness of our programs. Thirdly, we grow our resources and sustainability. And fourth, but certainly not last, is commence a metropolitan brand and operating structure consistent with constituent growth, need, and opportunity in the East and West metro suburbs. We know that all of these priorities are good. However, taking another look at today's objective, we need to consider labor market influencers and drivers beyond the pandemic. And I'll just mention a few, again, being conscious of the time. I pointed out the labor market major influencers and drivers beyond the pandemic are the economic factors. For example, found that it's a competitive and disjointed labor market, and also the major industry shifts in there's leisure, hospitality, technology, construction, and also, as Daniel pointed out, the health services. And another major influencer is the public policy. And thirdly, is the public policy, I'll just give a couple examples, is the livable wage versus minimum wage, and that's for state and federal. And also public sentiment or public discourse. And that's an example would be the social and economic justice movement. And also we have to look at the income gap between persons of color and other persons, other workers, and also finally, race matters.
Dr. Doyle?
Yes.
My apologies. In order for us to get to all of our members, we will have some open dialogue. Okay. So if you have additional comments, I would appreciate if you can hold them until the open discussion.
Okay.
My apologies for needing to cut you off.
That's okay. I tried to limit.
I appreciate you.
But I do have some more. Okay. All right, I'll wait.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will hear from Louis King. Mr. King has served as CEO of Summit Academy OIC since its founding in 1996. In January of 2022, Mr. King took on an additional position as president and CEO of the national network of OICs. At OIC of America, he will help lead the implementation of a national training program modeled after successful Summit Academy OIC programs, which will serve as a solution to America's current labor crisis. His vision focuses on stabilizing families by ensuring that parents earn the wages needed to adequately support their children. In addition to his work at Summit and the OIC of America, he serves on several boards, including Allina Health, American National Bank, Cerisi Walburn Foundation, Monitors Foundation, OIC of America, and Our Children Minnesota. Mr. King, welcome. You're muted.
Thank you, Commissioner. This opening slide is one that drives my team every day. And it's one of the issues that we have to face as we enter a different day. We're still trying to use the same tools that were there for the last 20, 30 years. Next slide. Next slide, please. Ta-da. So here's what's up. They call this a sans-demic. It means without people. So we just don't have enough bodies in the box, and they're not coming for a long time. Now, while this is a challenge, it is also an opportunity. My people came to this country because of a labor shortage. That's what slavery was all about. By 1916, though, another labor shortage began, the Great Migration, which fostered the development of the Black middle class, which then led to Brown v. Topeka, Kansas, Civil Voting Rights Act, and Barack Obama. This is the third labor shortage, and we at OIC see this as the third opportunity to transcend the language of BIPOC and the social scientists through a market-driven solution, which has always been the way that we really made progress. Because for the most part, the technical training system was taken apart as a result of the legislation in 1998 around welfare reform. There's also been a misalignment between higher education and labor needs, meaning that they don't see the children as future workers, as an abstract exercise, not really equipping people for what they need to know and what they need to learn. And then finally, there's a lot of people who count on this as their revenue stream. So even if they're not fit to meet today's challenge, they're going to fight to keep things in place the way they've always been, because they see it as difficult to retool. So you'll find a lot of soft skills training out there that has dominated the environment. Next. So what do we see as the deal? A market-based approach. 20 years ago, when I was trying to break into labor unions, it was all about give my people a chance. Today, I get to select which contractors we want to work with. And I had a conversation over lunch about contractors, major GMs, construction managers, et cetera, who we can pick and make winners and losers because they can't get people. And I have a large supply of them. Next, find the forgotten people in the forgotten places. The politics of the country has divided us between rural and urban, when in actuality, the people in rural America have the same issues as urban America. Both are isolated economically and socially and see little hope. We got to go in and mine them, build that ant trail so that they follow each other, know that opportunity is there. And thankfully, because of the pandemic and the use of technology, we now have the wherewithal to get that penetration. Finally, there's a deliberate development of the workers of today, tomorrow, and the future. You know, the agrarian society saw children as future farmers and put them to work pretty much right away. Well, we don't see them as farmers necessarily, but we can aim them at STEM, at technology, just as well as we can have them in AAU basketball and sports and gymnastics and those types of things. But we don't have a broad-based strategy, which we've now begun to experiment with, and it is yielding fruit. Next. Here is an example of the untapped talent in Minneapolis. You can see where there are census tracts in North Minneapolis that have poverty rates at 40% or above. Prosperous communities are safe communities. And it is impossible to believe that none of the people in these census tracts can do jobs of today and the future. So we found strategies to go out on the corners and get them to recruit everywhere. And then once you produce one, they go and get the others and turn them into workers too. And before it's over, it won't be microwavable, but we will have a community of workers by getting the scale. Next. We utilize a matriculation management system to intentionally build a path to the middle class. We don't do bedpan type tasks. We don't do bottom feeder type jobs. Let somebody else do that. Because there must be upward mobility and the people can see middle class jobs right away. So our average income coming in is about $21,000. After 20 weeks of no cost education with a 2-week paid on the job training, we can get you to 40,000. If you have anybody else in the house making $15 an hour, you're at 70,000 as a household. We place people at US Bank at $60,000 as app developers, not just one, but several. And other firms are utilizing our people too. You also train them so that they understand how to take advantage of the employer education package and move forward so they can get to 50,000 and beyond. They're solidly in the middle class and don't need any social services. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. King. Next, we have Denise Butler. Denise will introduce herself.
Yes, before I introduce myself, I do have a presentation. Will I be able to just present it, or is there something you need to do on your end?
You should just be able to share your screen.
Okay. Now, where do I find the share screen button? Oh, it's the arrow.
Yes, the arrow. Yep.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, I am Denise Butler. I'm currently the Associate Director and the Economic and Community Development Director here at ACER. ACER is African Career Education and Resource, Inc. And I will try to stay within my 5 minutes. So then what do I do? Do this and do this and then do present and then present. And okay, so you guys are seeing my presentation, right?
Not yet.
You're not?
No.
That's all I see right now. I don't think
You could maybe put a link to the file in the chat, and I could share it.
Okay, let me try to do that then. My apologies. Okay, I think what I needed to do was this. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll put it in presentation mode. And then, so you're only seeing my presentation?
Correct.
Yep, very good.
All right. And so here at ACER, these are our core programs: civic engagement, housing justice, economic and community development, and health equity. For economic development, the work that I lead here at ACER, the mission of the work is to utilize culturally based investment frameworks based upon various business models to shape how resources are allocated and channeled to culturally based businesses to grow wealth and close the generational wealth gap for BIPOC and immigrant business community. Our vision is an economic ecosystem that is inclusive of BIPOC and immigrant businesses. The programs here that I lead in the economic and community development are advocacy and policy, business services, and community development. What is the program and how does it basically work? Our economic and community development program is modeled as aligned with developing the leadership of micro business owners, creating policies to ensure micro businesses are included in development plans, and ensure that government recognizes community created narratives in all types of BIPOC entrepreneurship. What problem are we looking to solve? Is to have inclusive policies that impact our micro businesses at all levels of government, buying onto the community created narrative and accepting community definition of micro businesses. Economic development ecosystems operate with a holistic approach to BIPOC and immigrant businesses as the pathway to prosperity for communities of colors, as well as the future of all economic landscapes across the nation. We conduct activities centered around 3 buckets of work: advocacy and policy, business and workforce development, and community development. So policy and advocacy for us, we work in partnership with various levels of government, local cities, counties, and the state around structural and programmatic changes to support better access to resources for BIPOC businesses and community infrastructure. The outcome is to decrease the barriers that micro businesses face around eligibility and qualifying for financial capital and accessing technical assistance. Our business and workforce development is about the outreach and engagement strategies and the direct services we provide to BIPOC micro businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs around business services, business engagement, and business workforce. Our community development work is about to support and maintain the community action. Community members come together to take collective action and generate solutions for community wealth building, investing in BIPOC economic hubs, community ownership, and shared ownership models. 2022-2023 outlook. What is workforce development for BIPOC microbusinesses? This work looks to address the gap in the labor shortage, creating the synergy for hiring of people of color, the diversity lacking representation in certain industries concerning the healthcare, technology, childcare centers, staffing agencies, and microbusinesses' ability to decrease the unemployment in BIPOC communities by increasing their hiring and ultimately closing the wealth gap. Ways in which we could address this work is funding to support culturally respective workforce training done by BIPOC training companies, funding for TA to support BIPOC microbusinesses in their hiring, funding to support more training and engagement around community ownership and shared ownership models. Questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Butler. Now, this phase of the panel, we will move to some of the prepared questions that have been provided to our panelists. I will be moderating. I will read the questions for the entire group, and then we're asking each panelist to respond to each question. Please try to limit your response to each question to about a minute or so. So we have 4 questions prepared. First question is, given the ideas you shared here today, what is the one change or strategy you feel would best support economic expansion in the next 5 years? Daniel, if you can begin.
Thank you for the question. So unsurprisingly, I'm going to talk a little bit about, so our labor management training partnerships are really, a term you might hear is industry partnership strategy. And I think that industry partnerships, if you look at what they are, have proven to be very effective models of bringing forth and bringing together all the parts of the ecosystem that are really necessary for a holistic set of services. So brings together the voice of workers, the engagement of workers and communities, labor management, educational providers in healthcare as well, to transition to, if we're really talking about a holistic set of services, what I described today in the field of workforce and in the healthcare workforce, we traditionally talk about the training itself, but there are a variety of other components, all those components that I went through today in terms of the holistic and comprehensive package that are equally, oftentimes, if not more important than just the training themselves in terms of supporting career mobility options and supporting persistence in programs as well. Oftentimes people are impacted by daily life, or we've seen sort of what's been going on during the pandemic related to issues related to childcare and elder care as well too. So I think an industry partnership strategy is a really powerful model to support what we're talking about here today.
Thank you, Daniel. Same question, Dr. Doyle. Given the ideas you shared here today, what is the one change or strategy you feel would best support economic expansion in the next 5 years?
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. I certainly agree with Daniel. And I also, when I addressing this question, I looked at challenges and opportunities. So I looked at challenges as the volatile and often misaligned workforce development market, and as an opportunity to is to collaborate with, collaborate with government agencies and trades to develop and implement workforce solutions to address the skills gap in various sectors. For example, I had mentioned early on the manufacturing, the skills gap also in healthcare, construction, and also services. And so once these persons are given livable wages, and once they earn it, it will support the economic expansion.
Thank you. Mr. King.
Yes, I think that one thing we have to do is have a change of culture, particularly in the language that we use. In the Zoom world of today, things are changing, yet we still have a lot of the same terms that if you ask people what do they mean, you'll get a different definition from everyone. But to the point, as I said in my presentation, we're going to be forced to focus on the forgotten people in the forgotten places and to develop the workers of today, the adults tomorrow, the teens, and the future, the young kids, much the same way as they put them in skates at 4 and 5 out in Edina. And there are three things needed for success: education, skills, and a social network that attaches them to the opportunities, which has been one of the major structural issues. We find now that companies that really need people don't have any relationships in those communities. I'll end with an example. Write this down. Less than 1% of the bank mortgage loan officers in the United States of America are Black. Less than 1%. Why? So you want to know why a brother can't get a loan for a house? Start right there. And if we don't know anybody that's a loan mortgage officer in a bank, we don't know how to become one. We don't know what classes you need to. We don't know what classes you need to take, what schools you need to go to, what to do. Less than 1%. And this was brought to me by executives in the banking industry who now see this as an issue and want to deal with it. It's a structural problem.
Thank you, Mr. King. Ms. Butler.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Mr. King shared, language, right? Language is important. Using an equity lens, we talk about equity, and I mean, there's so many different definitions, but the one I like, for us to continue to move forward is it's an equity narrative that is from a shared language from BIPOC communities, and continue to respect the fact that they are the experts in finding the solutions and what best impact them. So it's always going back to the folks that you're trying to make changes for, going back and consulting them on what it is that they need for that change to happen. And then having an economic inclusion framework across all sectors. Anything you talk about is dealing with the economics, right? Housing is an economic problem. The criminal justice is an economic problem. Workforce, business, everything is an economic problem. So using an economic inclusion framework will be able to move us to have a better expansion of the economy. Being one and addressing all when looking at the ecosystem is not enough, but instead it sometimes can be a problem when you're trying to address the gaps and the disparities. And so thinking about language when you're trying to find solutions towards problems is very important for you to be able to have a better impact.
Thank you. The next question is, describe how holistic support of workers and entrepreneurs impact the Minnesota economy from your lens. Daniel.
All right, so I'll focus a little bit on the worker side as well. I mean, I think that we've talked a lot about a variety of holistic services. I mean, we know that there's a lot of evidence around how the inequities that we have, the systemic inequities we have built into our economic systems impact our economy as a whole. So I think that certainly if we look at our sector, my sector specifically, healthcare, where I laid out some of the issues in healthcare, a lot of low wage work, a lot of occupational segregation as well, too. I mean, clearly there are a variety of tremendous impacts from that, right, in the context of thinking about Minnesota's economy potentially as well. I think we certainly have an issue in healthcare whereby even if we connect the economic inequities to health inequities and care inequities as well, we don't have a healthcare system where the providers of care look like the communities that they're serving, right? Particularly as we move up the higher wage occupations. So there are tremendous potential impacts to both the economy of Minnesota and our country by the inequities that are baked into our healthcare system from a workforce perspective and from a delivery perspective.
Thank you, Daniel. Dr. Doyle.
Yes, on question 2, I follow up with Louis Keene. I want you to write this down as well. I looked up some research, and it shows that starting up a business is challenging, but most small businesses don't survive past 5 years, particularly for women and people of color. No, another barrier is venture capital firms under investment, which prevents these entrepreneurs from achieving their full potential. The statistics show that Black people are underrepresented in small businesses. They represent 12.7% of the population, but only 4.3% of the 22.2 million business owners in the country. So, and also, we're asking our young people of color to work twice as hard to access the spaces to which their white peers are often handed the keys. So it's our responsibility, not theirs, to break down these barriers.
Thank you, Dr. Doyle. Mr. King.
Certainly. If we're going to take a look at the whole of the practice, I think that the first pieces that I mentioned, education skills, are pretty obvious. The third one, the social network piece, is a little trickier because it's all driven by who you're surrounded with. And so we have to understand that and help people form those social networks that will get them into the workplace. Now, on the other side of the equation, because of the discriminatory practices, you also have to work with employers because they are not perfect. Their systems are not perfect either. And that is building trusted relationships and then supporting people once they get there. Finally, 2, we recognize that at the core of it, our people need financial support as they go through the process. Interestingly enough, during the pandemic, because we're an accredited vocational school, we were getting money from the Department of Education. We could give our students a laptop, and over the 20 weeks that they were there, $3,000 in cash, all right, which helped pay the rent and stabilize them also so that they could make it through school. So I think that dealing with the other side of the equation with the employers, I can't send you people every month and you're letting them go. You're not developing them. You got to pay attention to that. How do you do it? We want to know, get you immersed in our process, provide the financial supports, and building that bridge between the community and the employers, because the current HR practices have served to screen people out, and we're not necessarily built to bring them in. And as a result, when you go talk to the people down in HR, if you say you want to change it, they take that as a personal affront, and you have to really work with them to see that it is helping them to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. King. As I see, we are a bit over time, so I have 2 remaining questions. So unfortunately, we don't have time for each panelist to respond. And so I'm going to do it a little bit differently, exercising a little discretion in the interest of time here. So, Ms. Butler, can you give us examples of what strategies you've used to break down systemic barriers to ensure inclusion. You're muted.
For me, what was important during the pandemic was having a clear definition of what we meant between micro businesses and minority businesses. Because when the first round of funding came for the pandemic, Minnesota state funding, our businesses got left out because there was not an understanding of what a micro business is. When you say small businesses, you're leaving out the 92% of the little percentage of businesses here in America is sole proprietors. 92% of the businesses in this country are sole proprietors. And when pandemic funding came out, it was not for those folks. And then when you put minority in front of them, you're still dealing with the fact that white women who own 51% of a business in partnership with a white man would be the first one to get funding before you would get to our 92% of those folks who are sole proprietors. So for me, some of the key strategies in making sure that funding came to the second pipe was saying, this is what we mean by minority businesses. We're talking about BIPOC, Indigenous, person of color specifically. And this is what we mean by small business. We're talking about a micro business that's not having does not have 500 employees, even 100 employees, 0 to 5 employees. And that was very beneficial to make sure that the second round of funding came to be able to support our businesses. And even now looking forward into 2022, a lot of the new things that have come out from states and local cities around funding is being more intentional in their language and their eligibility because of the work that we did, ACER and other partners around language and defining what it means to be able to support our businesses.
Thank you very much. I think that really speaks to the earliest comments that language really matter in these conversations. Mr. King, can you describe what strategies you've used to break down systemic barriers to ensure inclusion?
Certainly. In the construction industry where we cut our teeth, we developed a labor forecasting tool which overrode the normal thing. Well, we can't find any last minute, hey, you type stuff. We built something that allowed contractors and developers to forecast labor needs the same way they forecasted materials, track money, and track safety. We use that tool on the US Bank Stadium, TCF Stadium, and also the Twins baseball stadium. And now we're going to use it on projects here as employers are looking for people. They need a systematic way of managing their recruitment, deployment, and retention.
Thank you. Daniel.
So I think from my perspective, so a lot of what Mr. King talked about in the previous answer are relevant to what I'm going to say as well too. I think that one, clearly we take a supply and demand side strategy. So the voice and needs of the workers and communities that we work with are equally centered. So I think that is obviously very important. You know, across the country, the workers that we serve, almost 70% of them are Black, Latina, AAPI, Indigenous caregivers as well. So we have learned a lot during the pandemic. We thought we knew a lot before, we learned a lot during the pandemic. There are really important strategies in the context of things we've made investments in related to work-based learning in healthcare, earn and learn models as well too, flipping the traditional training paradigms where you get trained and then it's incumbent upon you to find a job as well. We made big investments in earn and learn models as well. Digital equity has been a huge component for us as well too. We have found that in surveys that we've done in certain locations that the caregivers we work with, it's not even that they frankly didn't have a computer. Up to 50% of them didn't even have access to Wi-Fi oftentimes as well too. So I mean, we really love to see investments in, we've held caregivers as heroes during the pandemic. We'd really love to see some real investments in supporting the caregiving workforce because we all either need childcare hopefully at some point in time, elder care, or no family members who need that as well. So those are some of the strategies that we've incorporated.
Okay, great. All right, so this is the last lightning round. We'll give each member 1 minute to respond to the very last question. And it is, how specifically can this council build this work into its roadmap? Mr. King.
Stay focused on those three things that I talked about. Any solution must ensure that the people are educated to the point that they can function in the environment. B, they get actual marketable skills that they can trade across the same table. And C, the linkages between the business community and the workforce have to be such so that you can build relationships. Because no matter how we try to slice it, the social network is one of the most important tools that anyone can have. And without it, you just end up socially and economically isolated. You're all dressed up with nowhere to go.
Thank you. Dr. Doyle.
Yes, one of our goals is to make sure you respond nimbly to the economic and labor market shifts resulting from the pandemic. So we're asking the committee to look at your current policies and procedures on how to reduce these barriers and to expand these entrepreneurial and work opportunities. So, because it now appears that we're still going with this old boys network. And so we're hoping that we will be looking at the current policies to change this in terms of, responding to the labor market shifts resulting from the pandemic. And also, we're looking at providing workforce solutions to industry segments and employers, and helping us to collaborate with organizations to provide technical and career pathways for training and support to the people that we need to serve.
Thank you. Daniel, final words to the council. How can we build this into our roadmap?
Thank you. So a couple of things that I've talked a lot about today. I think one, it's really important to have a supply and demand side perspective that equally centers the needs of Black and brown workers and communities. Two, I would say industry partnerships are a critical component of that in developing a robust workforce ecosystem of partnerships. Three, I would say the holistic set of services we've talked about, not focusing just on the training or training access as well, but frankly, what are all the robust set of wraparound services and supports, including some non-traditional ones that we don't normally think about that are important in the context of supporting success. And then fourth, I think having very clear racial and gender equity metrics and good disaggregated data as well that our workforce systems oftentimes do not have.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Butler.
I would say take the time to read the Business Resource Collective's investment package. There's a lot of good information around there, around language, around what intentional investment looks like. And so they really show you some great models that you can put into the ecosystem to really continue to have the change that we made. I will say that during the pandemic, with the release of the PPP and the EIDL, we saw, 256 businesses increased, but by percentage-wise in BIPOC zip codes. So there's data there to support. I don't know what happened to support that. There's data there to support that investment and what it looks like. And it was money that entered communities in a way that had never entered it historically before.
Thank you so much, panelists. I appreciate all of you giving your time, your effort, your attention for participating in this important discussion. I apologize to the council, but in our efforts to bring forth as much information as possible, of course, we lose our ability to control the timing of this. But I want to thank you all, and please know that your contributions are valuable. We will take all that you've shared into consideration. If there are any questions from the council, I would turn it over to our facilitator at this point.
Yeah,
I think.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, great job by the panel, and just fantastic. We really appreciate your prepared remarks and maybe even more your lightning round and all your responses to the specifics that Commissioner Robertson was able to provide. Any other questions then? We have time for a few questions from the overall council for this panel while they're still with us.
Well, Jeff, Paul here. As always, I've got dozens of questions. I appreciate all the input from the panelists and the different perspectives on this. I'm particularly interested in, and Louis, you and I have talked about these issues over the years, particularly interested about the employer side of this. And Daniel, you referenced industry partnerships. You know, two kind of simple questions, and they're as much just for your perspectives, and you can just go a little bit deeper. To what extent are employers interested in this culture change? And Louis, you talked about, you know what, I'm picking my partners, you know, I'm not waiting around, but I think we're kind of in this space of to what extent are partners interested, or employer partners interested and engaged right now, right? And genuinely open to change, and how heavy of a lift is that effort to get them to change in their HR practices, in their internal culture? Be curious to any of your thoughts on that.
Certainly, Paul. First of all, it takes CEO leadership, period, all the way down the chain. Much when I was a commanding officer, I'd go down to the private in the machine gun position and tell him he was the tip of the attack, and the whole world depended on him right there. You can't just hand it down through the chain. They got to know that it's important to you. That's thing one. Thing two is no one wants to be the first in the pool, all right? So it's kind of like the kids running around the pool trying to find the best place to jump in, or middle schoolers waiting for who's going to get the first dance. You got to get a dance partner first that is a thought leader out there, and the others follow. Because A, they don't want to be left out, but they're afraid. Even when they have a real need, they are afraid, okay? And then finally, you have to be able to get in and mix it up at the ground level to make sure that the interface between your operation and the operation that you're attaching to are true to form. Nobody's perfect. So the community organization doesn't go out of blame if things don't work, and neither does the corporation. But you got to be willing to go the long haul. We've seen that with the construction unions, the contractors, now companies like Atomic Data, Accenture, and US Bank. It is a marathon and not a sprint. But once you start winning, the people that you get inside then become your ambassadors and bring others along with them.
I would just follow up really quickly and add that sort of for us, industry partnership, that's a pretty expansive term as well, labor, management, educational providers, many others as well. I think that in our sector in healthcare, given what's being faced in terms of attrition of the healthcare workforce, burnout of the healthcare workforce needs, there's a window right now to push forth some of the stuff that we're talking about that has not existed for quite some time. And there's a lot of conversation about it around the country. There's a lot of conversation around items such as, which in healthcare is a little trickier, skills-based hiring as an example, as opposed to, so changing some of the practices. I do think that there is a moment now that is driven by what's happened during the pandemic in our particular sector.
Are there some specifics that you all feel that the state of Minnesota could be specifically doing? You know, if we have a long-term perspective on this, we want to see significant improvement over the next 10 years. What at the state level could you identify that would really help it along?
I would argue that wholesale change is not possible. You got a lot of people dug in like a tick out there and what they do. You got to set something out there as a pilot and let it run. And then build on the success, be willing to fail much in the same way as NASA does, put the rocket back together and try it again. You're learning. But you have to look out. I was meeting with this guy today who's a developer and say, you know, we got to see the people we bring into construction today as the general contractors 20 years from now. You got to take the long view and you got to get in it. But the state, the bureaucracy, the nature of being an appointed commissioner won't get us there. We're not organized for success.
I would say the state needs to be a better job of listening and connecting that listening to what's been created, right? When I look at how the access to a training program and how somebody pays from it for my community, there's still barriers there. As far as who is the one that has the resources to provide it to my community member to be able for them to go and take that training, there are still barriers there, right? The entities that hold those resources in which my community member has to go and access those resources are not culturally respective, right? Even when the state is looking to bring in hiring from staffing agencies, they're still going to predominantly white, bigger entities. And we have a lot of, BIPOC staffing agencies here that just have a better relationship with folks in our community and can easily be able to bring those staff on. People interview, differently. The language barriers and everything that white staffing agencies are going to have those complications, and they'll be missing out on a quality worker, right? And so we really have to realize and accept the fact that BIPOC individuals are wanting to go to BIPOC entities to get whatever their services or resources are going to be. There's no way around that. And so the state needs to be able to cut out those barriers that they have in resourcing the smallest of entities that really can get out those employers out there into the workforce at a more quicker pace to address some of the gaps we're having right now.
Very good. Other questions by council members? Going once. Well, we should probably let our busy panelists get back to numerous other things that I'm sure they're involved with. But really, again, extreme appreciation from all of us for being willing to spend the time with us and to provide your observations and insights.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all.
Thanks so much. So we have a couple minutes before we break out into subgroups. First, any other observations that come to mind right now from the group about what we just heard here today? Or any other, maybe some other comments from the host panel, any of the other panel, and any of the other subcommittee members that would like to make a comment for the whole group about today's presentation?
I just wanted to thank Louis King for Sansdemic. I'm going to use that. That's amazing. The epidemic without people. And then the reminder that the rural economy was built on future farmers of America, and we don't have future tech workers of Minnesota or something in some of our neighborhoods. And wow, that could be useful.
Yeah, I would just like to lift up. I remember earlier in conversations here at the council that we talked very strongly about the need for local solutions and local communities leading the solutions. And so I think that that was very prevalent within the comments of the speakers, that, you know, really meeting communities where they're at in both needs and the style of programming they offered. So I just want to underscore that.
I'd like to just give a shout out to our subcommittee. Sorry that the best laid plan did not allow for everyone's involvement, but just know that this was a team effort, and I thank you. I thank all of you, and for the whole council. This was team effort, but I got to the speaking parts today. Thank you, Juhi and Brenda and Marcus.
Well, it was a great panel on a very important topic. We look forward to, as we circle back later in April and we kind of start talking again as a group, how things are looking. It'll be fun to see what you guys are coming up with for draft recommendations. I guess at this point, Liz, if you want to pop up, do we have a slide at all then for preview for the next steps? And so maybe you go ahead. I know we surveyed the group on the question of in-person hybrid meeting, but I have not seen the results. So this will be like the Academy Awards. We can open the envelope and hear what happened live here.
Surprising. So most everyone preferred the mix of online and in-person. I think just kind of as schedules will allow. So that seems like a good place to go. 9 people filled out the survey. If people still want to fill out the survey, we're open. It's still open. I'm not going to close it. So if you haven't yet, feel free to fill that out. And then there was a strong location preference for the metro or like the 7-county metro. So I think that's where we'll host options. But there's also a box in there where if you want to submit a location, you can. So thank you for the people who did. And then there's 2 other things I want to flag before we bump out into our small groups. As you have, a lot of you are meeting, a lot of the committees are meeting in the off weeks and hosting people. And if you feel like it'd be interested, like the council more broadly would be interested in hearing those conversations, let me know and I will figure out a way to share that information with the council more broadly. I know that some of us are trying to fit in a lot of speakers into a small amount of time, so we're having to offline some of it. So more of a flag, contact me and I will share that information. And then the next council meeting is the subcommittee 4, which is the business supports group. So Jeff, I don't know if you all want to preview that meeting, what might be happening there.
I mean, I'd be happy to. So our group is still working on it. It's Scott and Jody and myself with Nick as our very able state professional. We have invited 4 CEOs from Minnesota companies. We have 2 for sure yeses as of today, and maybe Nick has an update, but Corey Berry from Best Buy and Doug Baker from Ecolab have both agreed to be part of the panel. Do we have, Nick, did you get any other updates on our other 2 invitations, or?
That is all that has confirmed to date.
Okay, so we could have 2, 3, or 4, and we'll have, so they'll be in front of the whole group. We at one point had ambitiously thought about trying to actually have 2 panels, one of entrepreneurs and one of the bigger businesses. And just after, learning from how it goes here and how rich the input is in this. That just was overly. Subcommittee, we'll talk to the group of entrepreneurs. We already have had a subcommittee panel last meeting where we got to talk to people who run mid-sized businesses. So we'll certainly still have the input from that group, but we'll not try to kind of put it all in front of the council. And then the one other twist, just so you're ready for it next week, or in 2 weeks, is, I mean, Jody had a really long-standing conflict with Caring Bridge. A major meeting they're having that ends at 3, and so the kind of our council advisory group has decided we're okay with flip-flopping the meeting basically next time. So the bigger session will be from 3 to 4, and the breakouts will be from 2 to 3. So just wanted to kind of warn you that that was happening ahead of time. One last thing on the in-person or not, I mean, and remind me either Paul or anyone from the staff. I mean, at one point we had kind of maybe tentatively aimed for, was it April 25th that we were thinking we might try an in-person meeting? Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. And I think we're in the process of planning that, and we're pretty sure it's going to be DHS has public meeting space capacity for about 100 and tech setup. So it'll most likely be in St. Paul on the 25th. That meeting will be in person. And we're also thinking about maybe making that meeting a little bit longer, just to kind of honor the meatiness of that meeting as being our first in-person opportunity. So more to come on that. And I'm excited to maybe get us all together, or a good chunk of us together. So
I wanted to make sure you kind of had that on the radar. And again, as consistent with the survey responses, we definitely will have a hybrid option. In fact, we were informed the way the rules are. I mean, we have to have a hybrid option, both for our own council members and for public participation. And so we'll make that happen. Anything else we should do? All the whole group's assembled, or otherwise should I call this meeting adjourned and everyone go? Nick just sent updated links, or just a confirmation of the links to everybody via email, for which, if you hit your right group, you should pop into the right place. But if nobody has any other questions, we'll go ahead and do that part of the meeting, and look forward to seeing everybody again in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.